On July 30th, 2008, Tim McLean, a carnival barker, was returning home to Winnipeg after working at a fair in Edmonton. He departed Edmonton on board Greyhound Bus 1170 to Winnipeg via the Yellowhead Highway through Saskatchewan. At 6:55 p.m., the bus departed from a stop in Erickson, Manitoba with a new passenger, Vincent Li. Li, described as a tall man in his 40s with a shaved head and sunglasses, originally sat near the front of the bus, but moved to sit next to McLean following a scheduled rest stop in Brandon. McLean barely acknowledged Li, then fell asleep against the windowpane, headphones covering his ears. According to witnesses, McLean was sleeping with his headphones on when the man sitting next to him suddenly produced a large knife and began stabbing him in the neck and chest. After the attack began, the bus driver pulled to the side of the road and he and all the other passengers fled the vehicle. The driver and two other men made an attempt to rescue McLean but were chased away by Li, who slashed at them from behind the locked bus doors. Li ultimately decapitated McLean and displayed his severed head to those standing outside the bus through a window, then returned to McLean's body and began severing other parts and consuming some of McLean's flesh. Witnesses stated that this continued over the course of the next few hours. At 8:30 p.m., the Royal Canadian Mounted Police received a report of a stabbing on a Greyhound bus and arrived to find the suspect still on board the bus, being prevented from escaping by another passenger, the driver, and a truck driver who had provided a crowbar and a hammer as weapons. The other passengers were huddled at the roadside, some of them crying and vomiting. As the suspect had earlier attempted to escape by driving the bus away, the driver had engaged the emergency immobilizer system, rendering the vehicle inoperable. At 9 p.m., police were in a standoff with the suspect and had summoned special negotiators and a heavily armed tactical unit. The suspect alternately paced the length of the bus and defiled the corpse. Police officers then observed Li eating parts of the body. On July 31, 2008, at 1:30 a.m., the suspect attempted to escape from the bus by breaking through the window. The RCMP arrested Li soon afterward. He was shot twice with a taser, handcuffed, and placed in the back of a police cruiser. Parts of the victim's body, placed in plastic bags, were retrieved from the bus, while his ear, nose, and tongue were found in Li's pockets. The victim's eyes and a part of his heart were never recovered, and, in spite of his vehement denial, are presumed to have been eaten by Li. Meanwhile, the stranded passengers were transported from the scene to be interviewed at the Brandon RCMP department. On July 31, 2008 at 10 a.m., Greyhound representatives took the other passengers to a local store to replace their clothes, which remained on the bus. They arrived in Winnipeg at 3:30 p.m. that day to be reunited with family members and friends. Witnesses said that the attacker seemed oblivious to others when the stabbing occurred, adding he was struck by Li's calm demeanor. There was no rage or anything, he said. He was like a robot, stabbing the guy, he said. Tim McLean was born on October 3, 1985 in Winnipeg, Manitoba. He was 22 years old at the time of his death and had been working as a carnival worker, specifically in a carnival barker in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. On December 21, 2008, 5 months after McLean's death, his girlfriend, Colleen Yestro, gave birth to a son. In 2009, a custody dispute between Yestro and McLean's parents over guardianship of the boy began. McLean's family was granted full custody of the boy in February 2016. McLean's mother has described her grandson as a gift from God sent by my son to give me a reason to get up every day and take care of. In the aftermath, Canadians everywhere demanded to know what had caused the attack. Vincent Li himself provided an answer in 2010, telling the BBC that he had the voice of God speaking to him and that the voice sent him on a mission to protect people from an alien invasion. The voice told me that I was the that story of the Bible, that I was like the second coming of Jesus, and I was to save people from a space alien attack, Lee explained, adding that he was really sorry. In preparation for his perceived vision, Lee followed the voice instruction to travel across the country, often on foot or by bus. He would disappear from his home for days at a time, a fact later confirmed by his wife, who told the Toronto Star that he would often disappear, ramble, and take an unexplained bus trip. Lee was convinced that he was in constant danger from alien infiltrators and began carrying a buck knife for protection. This same knife was used to kill McLean. In March 2009, Lee was found not criminally responsible for the murder on account of mental illness and was committed to the Selkirk Mental Health Center. But for Tim McLean's family, it hardly ever felt like justice. Lee still did it, McLean's mother, Carol Deadly, said. Whether he was in his right frame of mind or not, he still did the act. There was nobody else on that bus holding a knife, slicing up my child. McLean's father, Tim McLean Sr., dealt with his grief by getting a tattoo of his son's face over his heart, but told the BBC that some days were still a struggle. Although we are trying to move forward, it's still an ongoing challenge. I don't believe we will ever fully recover, he said. To honor Tim McLean's memory, a white cross bearing his name has been placed along the road in Portage la Prairie. Below his name, etched into the chipped white paint, is a heartfelt message from his father. I think of you always, son. Love, Dad. In February 2017, Vincent Li was granted an absolute discharge and has since been living alone in a community within Manitoba, Canada. The Criminal Code Review Board for the province has determined that he is no longer required to attend yearly reviews or be closely monitored. Lee eventually changed his name to Will Lee Barker and lives as a free man. The news of his release ignited controversy and outrage among those who were affected by the tragedy, including Tim McLean's mother, Delly. But Deadly finds some solace in Tim McLean's memory and through his young son, who McLean never got to meet. According to CBC, Deadly says that her grandson, who was born 5 months after McLean died, inherited his father's eyes and sense of humor. She considered him to be a blessing from her late son, who motivates her to wake up every day and take care of him to be the best of her abilities. He's a gift from God, and I believe Tim sent him to me, Deadly shared.